Hello, good evening. Reynaldo Nelson and I talk about Vietnam and why it's considered an economic miracle. After the one with the United States in the early 80s and the apertura the politics duo Moi and the transition to social economic where is the first steps. Your geographical location and geopolitical situation favor take off. The most important aspect to highlight they pushed the economic miracle are is the one on the main maritime route. Vietnam is the only country of the free world has been able to grow the minimal increase social inequality. The government of Vietnam have been established three pillars: education, economic growth, and growth infrastructure. At present, more than 95% of the population have education.
Hello, my name is Nelson Carrillo. Well, as Carolina was saying, this reform was a large-scale reform plan. This reshaped the entire political institution and economic system. The three major drivers were the globalization or international trade. They embraced it, they welcomed it. Number two were the prices were deregulated. The number three was investment in their human capital and physical capital. We want to bring up all these measures in 7 different perspectives. In terms of private property right, they did a lot of initiative in this sense. Well, the most important, they generate a new constitution. Recognizing the private property, they enacted different kind of law, and three that we can share important to this term is number one, law on land, law on foreign investment, and law on private property right. This is very important. This transition from a controlled state to a free market approach. These were important in this transformation. The number two measure was the international trade. They were applying diplomacy. They hold different kind of meetings with different countries. They joined to the Asian Free Zone in Asia. They joined to the World Trade Organization, and they signed different kind of trade agreement with the United States, with Europe. They flexibilized, they started to decrease the quotas and the tariff for those countries. Well, in terms of prices, well, they did right. They abolished the entire fixed control prices in the system. They abolished the rationing of the consumer goods, and they started to attack, to work to try to reverse the inflation. Well, they started to give a lot of access, free access to internet. Well, in terms of the exchange or devaluation in the exchange rate, that was a huge impact. The devaluation was huge. They started to work with a free foreign exchange control. They adopt different kind of currency control. They change from a big ban to a moderated or gradual method to the dual system. Well, in terms of investment, that was huge. They started to adopt a different mentality, a pro-investor approach. The reduction in the bureaucracy was significant, trying to help to accelerate the processes. Later, the investment in infrastructure was so relevant and necessary. They started to invest a lot of national funds in education, but we will talk about that in the next factor. In this sense, they started to work in transport. The transportation was pretty important. Seaport, airport, land, how to communicate, how to get available the product that they are started to trade on time and in good shape and cheaper. Well, later they started to work a lot in education because they believe, well, they started to believe that the poverty, the problem in the poverty is the lack of education. So they started to develop a new system, facility. They started to build or invest to build a lot of facilities for the mostly primarily for elementary school. Well, that was very successful. The enrollment reached 95%. That is amazing. And well, they do another kind of stuff like a training international design in English and in computer skill, very important. And the last and none less important, labor and social initiative. They started to generate a lot of effort and initiative to combat their education. They started to generate health program. They started to combat the size of the family. They started to generate social services and health program. They enacted labor codes, and that was a huge effort, a huge impact to all this plan that they were pretending to generate the miracle. Thank you.
Thanks, Nelson. As Nelson just explained, Vietnam government economic political reform, or DOMOI, brought an economic miracle. Vietnam was like a phoenix, emerging from the ashes of the past after the paralyzing effort of the Vietnam War in 1975. GDP has been expanding, increasing, around 7% and remain one of the fastest growth in the economies in the world. After the reform, the free market growth led to the inflows of capitals and foreign capitals and rapid economic growth. In the 90s, the export increased between 20 and 30% in some years. In 1999, particularly, the exports account for the 40% of the GDP, which is an impressive performance during the economic crisis that happened in the 90s in the Asia continent. After 1997, the economic policy of Vietnam has been a little cautious, emphasizing more the stability than the growth. Vietnamese government reserved for them to hold some important industries and sectors like banking, state-owned companies, and foreign trade. For that reason, we can say that indirectly, the crisis in Asia of the 90s affected negative the GDP by the end of the decade, more or less around 2%, and you can see the effect in the graphic by the years 97, 98, and 99. However, in 2000, Vietnam signed the bilateral trade agreement, the BTA, between the United States and Vietnam, and was really a significant milestone for Vietnam because this established the normal trade relation of the Vietnamese goods in the U.S. market. Vietnam also, in the year 2000, became member of the World Trade Organization, with make it free Vietnam of the textile quotas that they have at that point in time, after 1974, when the multi-fiber agreement was signed and affected Vietnam, I would say, freedom in terms of the textile industry. Today, Vietnam is one of the, I would say, stars of the emerging market universe. Its economy, growth of 7 to 7%, competes with giants like China, and its exports are worth as much as the total value of the GDP. Regarding the high values industry during this period from 1990 to 2000, in this slide we can see that the transformation of Vietnam economy can be divided mainly in three periods. The first period, the starting period from 1996 to 1991, accounted for the 4.5% of GDP. Led by the sector 3, which is defined as the service sector, represented as the service sector, followed by sector 2, which is the industry and construction, and finally the sector 1, which is agricultural and fishing. Then we have the second period that was called the boosting period from 1992 to 1996. In this period, the GDP raised its maximum value at the rate of 8.9%. This time was the sector 2, the industry and construction, who dominated the economic scenes of the period, followed by the service sector, and again the agriculture and fishing sector was the last one. From 1997 to the end of the decade, economy was strongly, as I mentioned before, affected by the Asia crisis of the 90s. So this regional and monetary crisis makes that the government policy was more focused on the stability instead, to the growth, investing more in primary education and infrastructure. So by the course of the time, this investment has paid off. If you look nowadays, Vietnam became a hub for foreign investment and manufacturing in Southeast Asia. As you can see in the image on the right, by 2017, the Financial Times reported Vietnam as that was the largest exporter of clothes in the region, and the second largest exporter of electronics after Singapore. This also is related to the fact that some of the electronics giants like Japan and South Korea opened some subsidiaries in Vietnam country. If we look of the influence of the clothing industry, so it's very difficult that you have not noticed nowadays that in the stores there is a lot of clothes that are made in Vietnam. So all of this, I would say, factor are, part of the Vietnam evolution and economic growth. Investment in this basic sector of, I would say, service and then infrastructure and construction. Okay, so now I will let Carolina to make the final conclusion of the presentation. Thanks.
For the 30 years, Vietnam embarked at a new course. Prior to 1986, the poverty and devastation reigned over countries that had suffered bloody war. Today, 3 decades after the start of renovation for the policies du Moi, the nation of the Ho Chi Minh, by stand up of the one of the most prosperous Asian and popular world nations. It is also one of the few who has managed to meet the Millennium Goals, long before the date set by the United Nations. Success as the economic reform has been reflected in the index of the life in the inhabitants, In 1986, for example, the average income of citizens was between $15 and $20 per month. Now, the average income oscillates between $200 and $300 per month. In addition, more than 95% the population is literate, with the life expectancy of 72 years and one of the lowest unemployment rates around the world.